I'm currently sitting in the forest of the northeast coast of America. These are the forests that I grew up in. They're the forests that raised me. And the forests here are the places where I, for the first time in my life when I was younger, felt like myself. I spent so many years not really knowing what that would look like. And then when sorry, there's so many mosquitoes. When I started spending time alone in the forest, it was the first time that I ever felt like myself in my whole life. And I felt like when I was in the forest and I would look, it would just go on forever. And it felt like so freeing. It's like looking at the horizon of the ocean. You just feel like it's never going to end, and you don't even know if it will. I always felt that way in the forest. The past week has been so hard in the best way. I haven't been to here, where I grew up, in 2 years because, 2020 happened and I was working on myself and working on my business, and it felt right to just do that in my home in California. And so I hadn't been here. I think the reason why being in the forest when I was 17, 18 helped me so much was because there's so many parts of our lives and our days that feel like they make up who we are. The people that we interact with, the places that we work or where we go to school. And we become this mold of all of those things. We become our life. And when we come into nature, there's this stillness that doesn't let any of that exist anymore. And within the quietness or the boredom or the lack of doing, there's the question of who are you when there's nothing to do. When I came to the forest, I got to know myself for the first time, excluding all of my circumstances and who I had been and who I hung out with and what I did, and my tiny little life felt like it could fall away and expand into this huge environment. And when I was in high school, I would come here after school, or I would come whenever I could to just sit by the creek, and I would draw and paint. And I was reading a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is a pocketbook of his work. And I would just sit and read it and let the world that I had built up for myself in my mind that I thought was reality fall away and fall into the wonder of what it could be. I felt like my whole life I had taken advantage of the fact that I grew up in a forest and the fact that I had spent so much time outside. And it was around the age of 17 that I started to appreciate the land here. And I still wanted to leave and move, but I knew that I had time before that was done. And initially I had the thought of I could wait until I moved to California to take really good care of myself and do all these things. But I had this thought of if I don't do it now, will I ever? And so I started spending so much time in nature and by myself. And I feel like so much of what I am today is the version of myself that I learned was true when I came into nature. And coming into nature was the awakening of knowing what I am and knowing what I can be and knowing how big this world is and how small I am and how small my life is and how much this forest knows that I couldn't even comprehend. And it's the most grounding thing to know that you know nothing. And so within all of that, I felt like I became myself, and I lost myself in the best way. I lost the need to be anything when I was out here, and then I would go back into my life and fall into my routines and fall into my habits and fall into the world of being a teenager. But when I would come out here, I felt like I was the truest version of myself. And that was the first time that I ever knew what that meant. And when I moved to California, I missed nature, and I felt like I had found my peace in nature. And so moving to California became finding this forest within myself, which I actually just made a video about pretty recently. It's so easy to think that I know so much, or I'm doing so much, or I'm such a human, but when I come out here, I'm humbled by the fact that I know nothing. And the plants grow towards the light, and they speak to each other through the mycelium network with the trees. And there's such an intelligence here without one spoken word. And it's the most unreal thing. It's the most real thing. And I'm so inspired by it. And in a world that is so focused on doing, and in a Chelsea that is sometimes so focused on doing, when I come out here, I realize the importance of undoing and the importance of listening. Yeah, I'm saying all these words and I'm realizing more and more that none of them are even as important as the way a leaf falls off of a tree and just glides down to the forest floor. There's so much within that, and I have so much gratitude for the forest because it is the place where I found my peace initially. And it is a place that continues to teach me, even though I live in a city and have to, go to a drier forest or go to a more populated forest. It's the one place that teaches me so much. And so yeah, I just wanted to share that reflection. And I wish I could sit in the forest all day, but I have other things to tend to. But it's always a reminder to me that as good as I think I'm doing, I can always do better. And as much as I feel like I found myself, there is so much more to find and so much more to unlock. And also, right now is all there is. This moment in the forest is all there is. And I'm eternally grateful for it and for the process. And yeah, there is so much to be found in this world, in this earth. There's more than I could ever even learn in a lifetime, I feel. And that is the most freeing thing. And yeah, here I am. This is me. This is what I'm doing. Every moment is different and every moment is eternal. And I'm so here for it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you're doing well and taking care of yourself. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day today. I have not been to this forest in over 2 years. And this is the forest that the version of myself that I always felt like when I would come into the woods here was the version of myself that I became and am today. And this was the first place that I felt that version of myself. The first place that I felt like me, honestly. I had lived for so long not knowing who I was, and when I started spending time in the woods, I started to figure it out. And I always felt like such a good version of myself when I was here and figured out what I wanted. And then when I moved away and I spent a lot of time with myself, I feel like I lived that version of myself every day. And that is like, couldn't have expected that. Couldn't have even wished for it. So just coming back here really brings me back. This was the first place that I felt like me. Hi!